Welcome back to another episode of Flawless Play in Garage, where today we are once again working on this, my 1994 Buick Roadmaster station wagon, into which I am attempting to cram a diesel Duramax 6.6 liter V8 and Allison transmission. And they don't fit. But before we get started today, I've got to tell you about today's sponsor. Hey sponsor, where are you? Come here. But before we get started today, I've got to tell you about today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Knock Knock. Who's there? Doctor. Doctor who? Yes, that's right. The 7-year-old is still writing my intro jokes. Stick around. So, time to do the things that I literally should have done a year ago, which is test fit the body back together on the chassis and see if my frame rails are actually where they're supposed to be. So I'm not real confident. Now, part of the reason I didn't do this a year ago was that I couldn't actually set it down because I didn't have wheels. But now, of course, we have the custom wheels made. And it is actually sitting on its own weight. Now, the tires that I just had on hand they're actually the wrong size in the back, so I'm spacing those up. They're a little shorter than what the real ones will be. So I'm spacing them up by setting it on some 2x4s back there to get a little bit more similar. And then the ride height up front, that's just sitting on the the Corvette leaf spring. I suspect that in reality, I'm going to need more than the Corvette spring in front to hold up that diesel and get a decent spring rate. But at the moment, just the leaf spring by itself actually holds it up pretty well, even with the Corvette adjustment bolts on the suspension run all the way out for maximum lowness. It still sits up a little bit higher than what I would actually plan to run. I think I've got, I can easily go down another inch and still have okay ground clearance. So that'll sit down a little bit lower in reality, but something like that. And then we've very roughly mocked up the fender on here. I need to get the other fender on, try to get the hood on, get the bumper on, and then see, especially what I'm concerned about is the height of these frame rails, because you can see here off my custom frame section, I've got these front frame horns, and I set the height of all this based on measurements that I had taken, and I had welded those two together and welded some vertical supports to them so that they had the kind of the same relationship to the floor. I thought I'd kept track of all that. Between that and measurements, I thought I had it on, but of course I went ahead and powder coated the whole thing without ever test assembling the body back on. Or for that matter, like tacking it together first and then test assembling the body back on the front. And I got a gap, a serious gap between where the fender is and where the top of the core support wants to be, which could potentially really screw up all of the relationships between, the bumper, the headlights, the grille, the hood, the latch for the hood, etc. Also, my fitment problems are not yet done. I'm sure I can make new tubing to deal with some of that, but that alternator sits up pretty proud. So I kind of want to see how bad my fitment issues really are with the hood, especially on the alternator and the air conditioning compressor. So yeah, as I learned when I took it apart, the hood is too heavy for me to deal with by myself, and it's hanging up over there where you can't see it and I can't even see it. So I got a helper coming. I'm going to see how bad this problem really is and see if I have some grinding of powder coating and re-welding the front end of the chassis left to do here. Right now, it doesn't look real encouraging. Remember our motto here, there's never time to do it right, There's always time to do it twice. Okay, so obviously none of the intake plumbing fits at all. And I've got the alternator sat down into position. I can, like, this whole thing is sitting up a little bit higher than its final location, maybe by a 1/4 inch or so. I do have a little bit of clearance to the steering rack yet. I can take one level of spacers out, but like I said, not more than about a 1/4 inch. So now let's lower it down and see how our clearance is. Let's shoot through here, see if we can see it. And there we are, in contact. Oh yeah, it's both the alternator and the, the oil fill tube also hits the insulation pad on the hood. And we're not closed yet. Like, we got another inch and a quarter to go down to get it closed. So that's not going to work. Hey, after quite a bit of screwing around, look at this. It looks like a car, and the hood closes. It fits. Okay, that's not true, but if it was true, wouldn't that be cool? I had to cheat fairly extensively to do this by doing things like removing the inlet from the turbo and you know, the alternator, the air conditioning compressor, some other things. As I mentioned, I can lower the engine just a fraction of an inch from where it is right now, but not nearly enough to actually make it fit under the hood. Like, the front end accessories in the hood are just not going to make it. So, as you can guess by my little tape job here, I think it's time for a scoop. Okay, now when you're when the part number is scoop 03, then you're on to something. So this is from Goodmark. It's a generic cowl hood scoop I got from Summit. Those of you who are wondering, yes, there is an all steel bolt-on 2-inch B-body hood available for these cars. Should I have done that? Almost certainly yes. Did I? No, I did not. For a couple of reasons. One, this was $400 less expensive. Two is I couldn't really get measurements to know exactly like how much more clearance and how much width and stuff the other like pre-made cowl hood gives me. It said it was 2 inches, but like for the width and some other stuff, I wasn't totally sure if I was going to get the amount of room I needed in the place I needed it. And so this gives me a lot of flexibility. Like, I can kind of position it where I need. If I need to do crazy things, even like, you know, widen it or something, I have that option to work with. So that was my reasoning. I don't know. So obviously I'm going to be cutting off the back foot plus of it anyway. I guess since I already broke the windshield, it doesn't really matter. I'm thinking something like that. But I'll need to get some measurements here to see like how fast the rise is and make sure that I've got enough rise where I need it, i.e. on top of the alternator and the turbo inlet and the AC compressor. Okay, so obviously not everything is, you know, closed and latched and lined up perfectly. Plus, I mean, really not lined up. Like this is very, very loosely assembled. But there is the hood scoop. I will still be, you know, cutting this back flush and matching the curvature of the hood. But like overall, this is the general idea. And I think it's not too bad. And in another piece of good news, the front end of the car actually fits together pretty well. It's hard to see here because I can't latch the hood right now, but actually my concern about the gaps in the front end, with enough tweaking and kind of fiddling and making things fit within the rather large range of factory adjustment, I think it's all going to fit okay. I think my frame rails are in a perfectly fine position. And here's how it looks underneath. At the moment, you know, pretty much just a big rectangular hole. I will probably do a little bit more trimming up against that edge a bit to just make sure that we don't interfere with any of the plumbing down in here. But I think overall that hole is pretty much in the right spot and pretty much does what we need it to do.